Good morning. Good morning. Today we are going to tell a love story right out of the Bible. We are in the book of Ruth today. And if you haven't seen any of the videos in this series, you'll want to know that we're doing the Portraits of the Past series. We are going through the genealogy of Jesus Christ as we see it in Matthew 1. So today we are in the book of Ruth. We have talked about all of the stories up until the book of Ruth that concern the genealogy of Jesus. That's the ancestors that are listed in the genealogy in the Bible. So today we are going to do a beautiful, beautiful love story. This is a story about Ruth and Boaz. And just to give you a little background information, Ruth is from Moab, and she meets Naomi in Moab and marries one of her sons. And when Naomi's husband and her two sons die, she goes back to Jerusalem. She has been in Moab because of a famine, but when the famine is over, she decides to go back to Jerusalem, and she tells her two daughter-in-laws that she has to go back to their parents. And Ruth, the one daughter-in-law, says that she will not go back to her family, that she will stay with Naomi. And her famous verse that's in the Bible, it's sometimes read at weddings, is in the book of Ruth, the first chapter, verse 16, and it says, "Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God." So that is Ruth's famous line in the Bible. She tells Naomi that she is not going to stay in Moab. She is going to go back to Jerusalem with her and take care of her and stay with her and make sure that she's okay, because she is a widow. She has very few options for employment. So Ruth is going to go along with her and take care of her. And so they go back to Jerusalem, they go back to Bethlehem. That's where she was from. They go back to Bethlehem, and they settle in Bethlehem. Everybody sees that Naomi is back and that she has this foreigner, Ruth, the Moabite, with her. But the important thing is that Ruth loves God. Ruth is not a pagan. Ruth loves God. And as you can see, she says, "Your God will be my God." So this is where the story begins. Okay, they are in Bethlehem and in Judah and in Israel. And Ruth says to Naomi in chapter 2, "Let me go into the fields and pick up the leftover grain behind anyone in whose eyes I find favor." Now, this was important. A field in Bible times was not allowed to be harvested completely. There was a guideline, a rule in Bible times that some of the grain had to stay in the field for the poor to be able to go into the field and glean and have something to eat. So this is what happened. This is what Naomi was determined to do. She was determined to go into the field and pick up the grain that was left behind and have that for her and Naomi's sustenance. So in verse 3, it says, "So she went out, she entered a field and began to glean behind the harvesters. And as it turned out, she was working in the field belonging to Boaz." Now, Boaz is the other main character in the story. Boaz owns many fields. He has a lot of property. He is a prosperous businessman in Bethlehem. And he is also from the clan of Naomi's husband. Naomi's husband was Elimelech, and he's related to him. So he knows Naomi. He knows Naomi. So Boaz notices Ruth in his field. So he goes out and he's watching over his harvesters. He's watching over his workers, and he sees Ruth gleaning in the field. And he asks his overseer, he says in verse 5, "Who does the young woman belong to?" The overseer replies, she is a Moabite who came back from Moab with Naomi. So now he knows who is in his field. Now, I like to think that there was something about Ruth that Boaz found attractive at this point. It's not in the Bible, but I like to think, did he find her beautiful? Did he admire her grace as she gleaned the grain? Did he see that she was a hard worker, trying to take care of herself and her mother-in-law? What was it about her exactly that he noticed her? So whatever it was, Boaz went to her. And this is what he says to her in verse 8. My daughter, listen to me. Don't go and glean in any other field. Stay right here with the women and work for me. So he offers her a job so that she can come every day and work and take home as much grain as she can glean and carry. He also says, I have told the men not to lay a hand on you. Now, this is very important. He was very protective of her. He saw that she was a woman alone, and a woman alone in those days could be harmed. He wanted to keep her safe. He says also to her, whenever you are thirsty and you need to get a drink from the water jugs, you can. Over here, the men have them filled. So he's being so kind to her. And then at mealtime, Boaz invites her to eat with the harvesters, and he offers her sustenance while she is working. And he doesn't have to do any of this, but he is so kind to her. And she notices that. She notices how kind he is being to her. And verse 17, Ruth gleaned in the field until evening, and then she threshed the barley and carried it home. And then Ruth told Naomi about her day. She says in verse 19, the name of the man I worked with today was Boaz. And Naomi tells her this, that man is our close relative. He is one of our guardian redeemers. Now, the guardian redeemer is a legal term. In the Bible, it's a legal term for a person who has an obligation to redeem a relative in serious difficulty. So the guardian redeemer or the family redeemer is the person who comes in and helps out someone in the family that is destitute. In this case, we see that Naomi and Ruth are widows. They are destitute. Who's going to help them? Who's going to take care of them? There was a limited amount of employment in Bible times for women. So Naomi tells this to Ruth in verse 22. It will be good for you, my daughter, to go with the women who work for him, because in someone else's field you might be harmed. So she brings up the subject of her being, abused or have some kind of assault against her as she is trying to go out and trying to earn a living. So there is a very real danger that Ruth could be assaulted by a man in another field, and Naomi knew that Boaz would protect her. So Ruth continued working for Boaz. We're going on to chapter 3. One day Naomi says to Ruth, my daughter, I must find a home for you where you will be well provided for, because she sees the potential of Naomi to still have a husband. Naomi isn't that old. Naomi, I've read in different commentaries, she's probably about 40. She could still probably have some children. And Naomi, most of all, wants a life for her. More than just she has, going to work, coming back home, and taking care of Naomi. So Naomi tells Ruth to do this. Wash, put on perfume, and get dressed in your best clothes, and go to Boaz at the threshing floor. And she gives Ruth specific instructions on what to do when she gets there. When Ruth got to the threshing floor, Boaz was sleeping there. And this is what Ruth did. Ruth approached him quietly and uncovered his feet and laid down next to him. Now, this was a custom in Bible times that was perfectly acceptable, and it was apparently a custom of asking a man to provide protection of marriage. So this is the custom of the day. I mean, I'm not asking you to go out and do this today, ladies. This is not how it's done today. So she accepted the fact that this was the man that God had chosen for her, because she trusted Naomi, and Naomi sent her to Boaz. So Ruth was in complete agreement with this. Ruth did not do this by force, or she didn't feel guilted into it in any way. She went there willingly because this is what she wanted. So it was no coincidence that he found something attractive about her. I think there was no coincidence that she was gleaning in his field. I think it was no coincidence that he was a relative. I think God had his hand in all of this, and I think Ruth absolutely saw that and was in perfect agreement with this partnership. So God had planned the whole thing to work out exactly the way it did. So Boaz, he is at the threshing floor, and Ruth is there, and Boaz wakes up in the middle of the night and finds her there, and he understands what she desires. And he says this, I will do for you all you ask. So he understands exactly what her desire is while she is there with him. He understands what she wants. And he sends her home with 6 measures of barley. So he gives her a gift. He gives her a gift. So he's very generous. Not only does he readily accept his role in this love story, he is generous to Ruth, and he gives her a gift to take home to Naomi to show his kindness and his generosity. So now Boaz knows exactly what she wants, and he has to go to the city gate to take care of the business end of caring for Ruth. All right. So he does not delay. He goes that day, that same morning. He wakes up, he gets dressed, he goes to the city gate. He does not delay. He does not let her wait to find out, months or weeks down the line, how this is going to turn out. He goes right away that same day, and he goes to the city gate. So Ruth goes back to Naomi, and Naomi says, wait, my daughter, until you find out what happens, for the man will not rest until the matter is settled today. So we see how considerate Boaz is in readily doing and making plans and making sure that it is all settled in one day so that Ruth doesn't have to wait. So he goes to the town gate, and he announces, after he does his business, there's a little bit of a story there that you might want to go back and look at. It's the custom of the day to do all of these things in order to acquire property and a wife who belongs to someone who had died. So you might want to go back and read that, but to make a long story short, he goes to the city gate, and he announces, after he has done his business, he says, today you are witnesses that I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Kilion, and Mahlon, and I have acquired Ruth, the Moabite, Mahlon's widow, as my wife, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property, so that his name will not disappear from among his family or from his hometown. Today you are witnesses. So this was a legally binding agreement, and he announced it at the city gate for all to hear, so everyone would know. It would be like publishing something in the paper today. So like I said, it was a legal thing. It costed him money to buy the land that would become an inheritance to Ruth's children, his and Ruth's children. But it was also done out of love. Boaz loved Ruth, and he actually wanted to do it. He wasn't doing this just simply out of obligation. He wasn't just doing it simply because it was the right thing to do. He did it because he loved Ruth, and he wanted to do it. He wanted her, and Ruth got her happily ever after. Now, I just want to add a little bit of commentary to this. Ladies, I don't want you to settle. I don't want you to settle for less than God's best. I want you to wait for the man that God picks for you. I want you to wait for exactly the person God has for you in mind. No matter how long it takes for you to wait, I want you to wait for that special person that God has picked out for you. And he's going to have at least these 5 qualities that Boaz has. He's going to be protective. He's going to be kind. He's going to be generous. He's going to be considerate of how you feel. And he is going to love you with all his heart. And guys, what does a woman want? I just told you. A woman wants somebody who is protective and kind and generous and considerate and loving. All of those things. That is what a woman wants in her happily ever after. And I hope you enjoyed this love story today. I want you to have a wonderful, wonderful day and a wonderful weekend.